Boom, and there we go, ladies and gentlemen. We are live. Welcome to another edition of ANCAP Radio. I'm your host, the voice of liberty, Adam Carswell, joined by New Zealand's most wanted, Dave Henderson, my co-host, who's going to be assisting, holding it down here today. You guys will see MC and Dave here for the first half of today's show, and then I will be rejoining momentarily. But again, today's guest, MC Laubscher, the host of the 21 Best Cash Flow Niches. I heard he's working on part 2 or maybe even part 3 of that book, so we're going to learn about that today. We're going to learn about how to manage chaos in the middle of times like what we're seeing right now, call them inflection points, risk management, and then also maybe learn a little bit about rugby here today, learn a little bit about how he got to, I think we're coming close to 7 million total downloads on his podcast. He'll be able to tell you all that here today, folks. But MC, it's great to have you back on ANCAP Radio. You know what? We want to remind everyone, too, whether you're with us live or on the replay, hit that like button, hit that retweet button. We're diving in, and we will be opening up the floor for callers in about 30 minutes. But MC, just as a refresher for our audience, could you let us all know, how did you first become an anarcho-capitalist?
Well, thank you so much for having me back on, guys. It's great to be back on, and always enjoy our conversations. And you know, you let a South African and a New Zealander on a Twitter space together, you don't know what you're going to get, and then throwing a Canadian in there too, right? But yeah, to answer your question, I just think that growing up in South Africa during very, very interesting times in the country's history gave me a pretty unique perspective as a young man. I saw a lot of uncertainty, fear, chaos. I saw people panicking, freaking out. I saw a ton of misinformation circulating in media and all forms of authority. So nobody really knew what was going on. And the country was basically moved from uh, one power block to another power block. And I started to see that it's everything is basically nothing is as presented, and this isn't really for government in it itself at that stage. I recognize that is the problem here, because it's one group of power, a gang that gain a foothold of power at one stage in that country, and then it transferred over to another gang that gained a foothold of power, and the vehicle through which they did that was the government. So at that stage, I realized that, okay, so this is just like a more orderly, formalized way for gang members to control society and to control other people. And I started to look at that and said, well, you have to live somewhere, and it doesn't matter where you are. You're going to fall under a quote unquote jurisdiction of some sort of a gang that it's at that stage is making all the rules. But there's ways to exist, and there's ways to still live a free and an abundant life, and build amazing things, regardless of where you find yourself. So you can organize your life and set your life up in such a way that it has minimal impact and has a net positive of how you live it, regardless of where you live it. So that's kind of been my philosophy. But I'm glad I got a very early wake up call, as opposed to a lot of people later in life getting a massive wake up call in the past 4 years.
Well done. And so you essentially, MC, you were a refugee heading to the US. You went straight to the US from South Africa.
Yeah, and that's the nice thing, Dave. I think, like, being part of the Commonwealth, which is just a bigger organization of these gangs.
Yeah, indeed.
The Commonwealth it had certain benefits for people growing up in those countries. Whether it's South Africa or New Zealand, Australia. That you could travel around to the UK, where a lot of people make their initial stop. So, and I think a lot of folks that grew up, especially especially when I was young, a lot of folks wanted to go overseas and travel a little bit. after completing education, whether it be high school or university, and go see the world and see what's out there. So I was fortunate to having the opportunity to do that, and then I ended up in the United States, and I saw that the one thing really for the U.S. and this is 2001 now that I came to the United States is that there's a lot of upward mobility, regardless of where you came from, and you could still organize your life to really use the environment that the U.S. had as a springboard at that point, to really launch something and build something where I found it was very very hard in the other options that I explored. So
Yeah.
that's where I ended up in the United States.
Yeah, well done. And so just tell us, MC, what part of the states are you in? You're in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, so I'm currently in Pennsylvania. It's in the northeast of the United States.
Yep.
Most people are familiar with Philadelphia.
Yep.
Pittsburgh is a two big cities, so I'm about an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes from Philadelphia. But yeah, massive state. I don't think a lot of people really uh, understand how big the state is, and they're familiar with Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, but there's a lot of farms, a lot of farming communities, a lot of natural resources. So there's a lot of land that's being mined and explored and so forth, and a lot of farming communities. A lot of people have heard of the Amish.
Yep.
Uh, there's a massive community of Amish in the Pennsylvania state of Pennsylvania, and
Yes.
so a lot of farming communities have farmers markets, and yeah, they're still, which is great, right? The things of quote unquote the old world that still exist. Strong families, strong values and principles, strong solid communities where everybody knows their neighbors and still talks to them, and so forth. So you still find that in pockets.
And that's the attraction for you. It was that the style of community that you've just described, the rural environment. That was the attraction of that part of the U.S.
My wife is actually from the state,
Oh,
so
okay.
that was initially the attraction.
Yeah. Well.
But yeah, so that's what got me here. But even looking at different options throughout the United States and through different parts of the world, and obviously still have very very strong roots and connections in South Africa. It's a place that yeah, we love, and we're building over
Yeah.
there.
Well, I mean, that's the reality of the US. I mean, a lot of our listeners, a lot of people we have on as guests here, MC, are US citizens indeed, who have fled the US to some far-flung place where they are trying to build a life. But I mean, the US, in so many ways, is such a stunning place and fantastic place, isn't it? And where and has obviously a massive, expat community, with. It's such a geographically diverse place. It's such a culturally diverse place. And of course, the attraction for me, and I have over the years spent quite a bit of time in the US and had business there. Uh, the attraction for me was the heritage of the US, and particularly its philosophic heritage, which is something we can all regard and respect. But of course, the problem being it's drifted so far from that now that it's a complete pigsty. But as far as you're concerned, you see your future staying in the US?
Yeah, I think that's a very very good question. I think that during the time that we're living right now, it's a day to day, week to week, month to month, kind of year to year planning. I I used to think of how we used to look and say, well, this is kind of like a 6 month plan, a 12 month plan, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. I think over the past 4 years, everybody's kind of like ripped those up and throw them out the window,
Yeah,
because you don't know what environment's going to exist in any part of the world in the next month, next 6 months, next 12 months, next 5 years, and 10 years.
yeah,
So Yeah, so that's that. So the big theme for me is like, look, it's very unpredictable now. There's obviously some strong patterns that we can all recognize, which is happening. It's happening everywhere. But to get back to the root of the question, is this the place where I see myself? One of the things that and I forgot where I heard this first. I always like to give credit to someone that shared a great idea, but someone had mentioned that, in a time too where there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of kind of chaos brewing, and already there, safe places are very tough. Safe people, safe communities and networks. That's actually a better angle to come at or look at it at. And that really resonated with me because I've seen that in South Africa. And you get a lot of obviously like the news headlines is enough to for anybody that looks at it in South Africa not to sleep for a couple of nights. So it still looks from the outside looking in, it looks pretty crazy. If you look at the crime statistics, you look at you look at the just a general state of every single sector of that country. I mean, it's basically for all into just on every metric, it's basically a collapsed state. But yet, there's a lot of people that, amidst all of this, uh, are building great things. They've great communities. They have solid families, and they're still living a fantastic life because they've organized their life in such a way that they're not really that impacted from a day-to-day situation.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of a way to look at it. I'll give it an example. For example, in South Africa, they've also had an election recently. You
Yes.
can't make this up.
Yeah.
I feel like it's an election upon election, another election year upon another election year. They like to keep everyone busy, don't they? But even amidst the election, they all of a sudden now had they don't have as many rolling blackouts, right? The load shedding, as they call it back there.
Yeah.
But many parts of South Africa is without power. Don't think a lot of people are familiar with that. And in some parts of the country, they don't have it for a long period of time. So some of it is 6 hours. Some areas a little bit longer. And that's very, very disruptive for anybody trying to do anything. Just having go about your daily life, or to try to run a small business
Yeah.
where you have power outages constantly, right? So
Extraordinary.
what did people do? Well, you build your life in such a way that this doesn't impact you or as much, where you have your generators, you have your solar power, you become energy independent, you have access to your own water, you have direct access to your own food, whether you grow it yourself on a piece of land, or where you can plug into other networks or have relationships with farmers in your area and in your community, and it's strong relationships of trust that's there. So that's helped a lot of people. And that kind of resonates with the theme about safe people and communities and networks rather than just safe places.
Yeah.
How I look at the world now, I think it's very, very tough to position yourself to completely get away, regardless of what piece of dirt you find yourself on, from everything, all the developments globally, right? Hey, Dave, I don't think I can
Uh,
hear you.
I'm sorry. You've got me
Oh,
now,
there.
haven't you? Yeah. Sorry,
Uh,
MC.
there
Yeah.
you go.
No. What the point I was making is there is madness everywhere geographically that we might choose to live, and you're right. I mean, those communities are cool. Just on that point, MC. Just while we're talking about it, do you have much interaction with the Amish communities?
Uh, we have a market in our town that, yeah, they bring in their delicious goods and services every week. So every week, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And then obviously you can drive to 30, 40 minutes to farms, even closer than that. But they have markets, little markets in a lot of different towns around Pennsylvania,
Yeah,
which is just fantastic. So
isn't it?
yeah, you get yeah, and that's the thing with the meats too. I mean, the meats is just it's unbelievable.
Oh, really?
And even like the bike's good. I mean, yeah, just the it's an artistry. It's just it's a form of art, right? And an expression of their humanity in it. It's been passed down. You could see it too from generation to generation,
Yeah,
between the families, which is fantastic. And I think that's we've lost a lot of that. I remember, even in South Africa, people cook and grow food and make all these home cooked meals, and then all of a sudden you had in the 80s all these fast foods and restaurants and that kind of stuff coming in, and it was you could still enjoy and appreciate the form of artistry going to certain restaurants with incredible chefs and so forth, but it's almost kind of been lost
yeah,
for
yeah.
a while, right? And it's great to see that it still exists.
And MC, the meats you were talking about, are they essentially home killed? Do they have a central abattoir, their own abattoirs? They kill on the farm?
Yeah, I believe that there's a central abattoir,
Okay,
and then there's also some of it on the farm.
okay,
So it's a little bit of both. But
yeah,
I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned from especially tight, high trust communities such as the
yeah,
Amish.
yeah,
And I think and just to reference another example in South Africa, there's a town called Orania, which has been in the news for many, many different reasons. But it's very similar, where it's one demographic group that wanted to build a strong knit, uh, high trust society, to build their own community, grow their own food, become kind of independent, and they've had massive, massive success, which is why they're still being targeted
yeah.
and in the news constantly. So yeah, I mean, like those types of communities, and again, these are two examples that people might cite as extreme. You can build a community of like-minded people. Uh, wherever you are in the world, you'll find folks.
Mm,
Regardless, and plug
indeed.
into that community and build stuff
Yeah.
together.
Well done. And MC, we were going to talk about inflection points today. Do you want to just quick define for our listeners what an inflection point is, and the significance of them?
Yeah, I think like for an inflection point is when an event occurs, something occurs or happens that drastically changes the trajectory of where things are going or where things are headed. So I think that this year we're probably staring one big one. In the it's the looking at it. I mentioned that we've had elections globally, everywhere. I don't know how many different countries.
Right.
I mean, I've lost count. Um, Nor do I care that much
Sure.
to know the exact amount, but they're everywhere. But obviously, the upcoming election in the United States is going to be a big one, and I think it's not. I don't think for what they might perceive it as. They think, well, is the one guy's going to win over the other guy, and that's going to change things? No, not necessarily. What I'm looking at an inflection point is I think that the way that this has been constructed and set up is to lead to chaos one way or another. I think just the way that this whole thing has been structured, and of course, all the things that have happened in the first 6 months of this year already. And what I'm referring to is obviously the lawfare, obviously the one side targeting a political opponent and throwing everything at this person. So that's already created an environment that is going to lead to a little bit more chaos forward. But I think like this one's going to be a big one. We look at if you look at these two characters, they're in the race right now. I don't know by November who's going to be on the ballot. Quite
Indeed.
frankly, I know it's going to
Indeed.
still be the two factions,
Yeah.
but you could probably make an argument that one or either both of them might not even be
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
come November.
Yeah.
So that's going to be already chaotic if that happens,
Yeah.
because they still have to have their conventions. So
Yes.
nobody's been anointed yet as the runner. These two
Sure.
political points.
Yeah.
So that could be a little bit of a shakeup, and then of course the outcome of it, regardless of which way this plays out, I can just see that it's going to be chaotic, regardless of who wins and how they win. If it's all the counts and the votes are in the first on election night, and it goes for the one person over the other one, I think that's going to be chaotic. If it's as extended again like the past one in 2020 for 3 to 4 days, that's going to be chaotic. So I think it's kind of set up that you don't have anybody accepting the outcome of the results. That's
Right.
kind of how I look at it.
Right.
Which, that is a circus on itself,
Yep.
which it's kind of a reality TV show.
Yeah.
Regardless of who ends up in the seat, we're still going to be looking at all of the same problems. We're still going to face all the same issues. I think what I mean by inflection point is what the environment that we are going to live in
Yeah.
will and operate in
Yeah.
will look like.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
we humans,
Yeah. Yeah.
we humans are strange creatures, and when people get very emotional, lose their minds collectively, it's going to be very volatile. So there might be a lot of interesting things that then happen when people start to lose it. And it could be again the 2020 election, the chaos, the riots, the mostly peaceful protest, kind of 2.0, which that is something to prepare for mentally. And then also, we've got a lot of business owners and investors listening. As a business owner and investor, this is the environment that you're going to operate in if you're in the United States. And unfortunately, regardless of where you are in the world, this is going to spread over and across the world. What here? So that's very, very interesting for me right now.
Yeah, I bet.
And yeah, so looking at how to position yourself, from a risk management standpoint, for you, your family, your business, your investments, of potential mass chaos and mass civil unrest. I kind of see it set up for that way to be played out.
And of course, as you're suggesting, amongst all that chaos, there is actually great opportunity. And that's what you are advising your group of people, your and our listeners, how to take advantage of.
That sounds familiar. Crisis investing. Yeah, it's.
There you
I
go.
think
There
there's
you go.
yeah. I think that with all of this going on, for folks that see this coming, and by the way, I refer to it as a gray rhino. A lot of folks call, you're going to have the media run.
Lost you.
Oh, this black swan event, and
Ah,
can you believe this just
yeah. Sorry, MC, we just lost you just for a moment there.
happened?
You
And
said that we're going to have the
you
meeting.
can add.
That's okay. Folks, I'm talking with MC Laubscher, and for a moment we have unfortunately just got a technical hitch with him, but he is, I can see he's busily sorting it out. MC, you can't hear you, I'm afraid, MC. You've disappeared there. I don't know whether our producer has got him back online, but we're talking about inflection points, and we're talking about the significance of the US election, and regardless of the outcome of that election, the inevitable chaos that's going to flow from that. No, I'm sorry, we lost you. We've still lost you. And of course, not only do we have the US election this year, which is obviously a significant one, in less than a month, we're going to have the UK election, which is going to be a very significant election. The Conservatives have been in power for 13 years, and yeah, we got you now.
All right,
MC.
sorry guys. We got, in a very connected world, we got disconnected there for a second.
Yeah, no. This Twitter space can be hard work sometimes, MC. So, thank you for persevering there.
No, absolutely. I think you guys. Where did we finish up? Where did I
We were
left off?
Well, you were just about to criticize the media, which is a very healthy pursuit. But no, I mean, I think the general sense, MC, as we were talking about, regardless of the outcome of the US election, we're going to have significant issues that aren't going to flow worldwide as a consequence of that. And I guess we could just say it's not a matter of whether there is going to be disruptions and significant issues and whatever else flow from that. It's just going to be, what's relevant is the extent of that and how that ultimately manifests and who it affects.
Yeah, I think it's going to obviously that's going to create the crazy environment, and then none of the massive issues are going to be fixed anyway. The challenges that we're looking, I mean, the debt globally, what's happening to every single country, every single state, province, um, every single town, city, municipality. The nothing's going to fix the massive issues, and of course, the draconian and tyrannical measures that governments are just adding every single day. So it's just going to provide a little bit more of a flavor to the environment. And I think what I was trying to say is for folks that can stay just calm, they can see this coming. And I believe I mentioned that it's going to be painted as a black swan by the media and add their narrative to it. But this is a gray rhino. So the African in me is saying this is a gray rhino. A gray rhino is something that you could see coming, you could hear it coming, you know it's coming, and you better take cover and prepare for it, and stay calm in the meantime while doing it. And for folks that see that, there's going to be a ton of opportunities, and there's going to be a ton of crisis investing opportunities for investors, and for business owners and entrepreneurs, because what the picture that we just painted is going to there's going to be a lot of problems that exist in that environment. And of course, business owners and entrepreneurs can solve a lot of those problems in an environment such as that if they just stay calm and keep about their heads, and a lot of opportunities for investors.
Yeah. And isn't that a classic example of the type of environment where the community that you were talking about before, that we were discussing, comes to the fore, doesn't it? I mean, we all live in communities of some form or t'other, whether they be a suburb in a city or a small rural community or whatever. And it is in those environments that you find, whilst there is a lot of madness, there's still a tremendous amount of goodwill and people acting in good faith and wanting to help others out, we could say, and the community really comes to the fore, doesn't it? Its significance. And I think that's something that people who are trying to reflect on how these things play out, that how significant those communities become.
Yeah, I think that should have been, and if it hasn't been, should be one of your biggest investments. And that takes a lot of time, and that takes a lot of strategic effort. But I think that should be one of your biggest investments, and try to build them in multiple places too. Obviously, everybody listening to this, when it comes to risk management overall, they understand that The political part element of risk management is huge. The economic part is huge. The market is
Yeah.
obviously massive. The asset itself, or the asset class, and then of course counterparty risk, whether it be operators, whether it be institutions, and so forth. So they understand that ladder, and you have to have different strategies for all of them. And when it comes to the political risk, yeah, you have to make an effort and obviously invest in communities where you are, and then also invest in other communities and network in different areas where you're not, where you can have a plan B, if need be, right?
Yeah, indeed. MC, I just want to talk a little bit about your books. You've done a series of books. You've been very prolific. And can you just tell our listeners, the last book you did was the 21.
The 21 best cash flow niches. Yeah. So I've got a show called Cash Flow Ninja, and
Yep.
I launched that in 2016. We've yeah, it's been quite a ride. We've been downloaded in over 180 countries, millions of downloads, and what we discuss is just business and investing. So we've interviewed some of the best minds in business and investing, and kind of the idea for the book was people kept asking me, MC, what are some of the most interesting alternative wealth strategies and alternative
Right.
asset investments shared on the show? So they kept asking, and I'm like, well, I could probably write a book about this. So I came out with the first
There you
one.
go.
That was the 21
Yeah.
best cash flow niches, creating wealth in the best alternative asset investments. And then I wrote a second one. It's called the 21 most unique cash flow niches, because there's been some
Yep.
very unique ones shared. And then the third one, the 21 best cash growth niches. So their
Right.
trilogy is out now, and in those books there are 66 alternative asset investments, thoroughly researched what they are, how they work, why investors invest in them, what the ecosystem looks like in that particular niche, how investors might generate income, just grow their wealth in that particular niche, and then also what's the downside? How do you lose your shirt? And then we finish
Right.
off just on what's the positives and negatives. So there's about 66 of them. And then there's also different types of strategies of just how to preserve wealth. One, I think that will resonate with a lot of folks on this show, for example, is how to
Yeah.
collateralize certain assets and gain political diversification. So you can, for example, store gold offshore in the Cayman Islands, and then obviously place that gold as collateral for lending to then use in your business or grow your investment portfolio. So kind of
Okay.
ideas like that.
Yep.
That
Yep.
we've shared in it. So but it's been fascinating. I mean, it's been very, very interesting doing that show for the past 8 years, and then obviously writing the book keeps you on your toes to just
Yeah.
recall and review all of the different types of content that we've put out.
So just take one just as an example, MC, anyone, and just run it out for us as an example of what it is and how people would benefit from it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a good one for this audience. This is a good one because
Yeah.
this is kind of like a wealth preservation, long term kind of play. There
Right.
is actually an asset class of fine whiskey, which we all enjoy and have at some stage
There you
enjoyed
go.
a fine glass of Scottish whiskey. And it's a very,
Okay.
very interesting market. And
Yeah.
what has occurred in that market is that investors have the ability to invest directly into these casks of fine Scottish whiskey. Now, this is obviously a long-term play. Now, it's a commodity which we all which we all
Yeah.
enjoy. Um,
Yeah.
it's something that takes time to get the best out of the fine whiskey, and the longer that this ages, the more valuable it becomes. So it's
Right.
again not a short-term play, a very long-term play, but if there's people in my network that as soon as their child were born, they would buy and invest in one of these cars. of
Right.
fine Scottish whiskey. And if you
Right.
think about it, 100 or 200,000 going into something like that with a very specific distillery that's going to age
Yes.
for 20 to 25 years, there's going to be a
Yes.
significant there's a market for 20 to 25 years of fine Scottish whiskey. So I thought it
Right.
was fascinating because
Yeah.
everybody's looking at different kind of plays, right? For inflation, we're looking at commodities, we're looking at wealth preservation, we're looking at a very long term kind of
Right.
horizon, and it kind of adds a little bit of a legacy element to it as
No,
a little bit of a
isn't
legacy play. So
it?
it's fascinating.
Isn't that isn't that a cool concept? And so, just that's just Scottish whiskies that are in play in this environment.
There's other ones too, because they're all over the world. The
Okay.
Japanese ones are getting
Okay.
a lot of attention too, but
Gee.
for
Gee.
still from a wealth preservation and building standpoint, the
Yeah.
tried, the true, the tested, kind of the gold standard is the Scottish. So that's where a lot of the money is flowing into. But
Okay.
ideas such as this that are very unique and interesting is what I threw in the books, especially in the 21 most unique cash flow niches. Because, we all know the different types of real estate, there's
Yep.
different types of investments and plays. So I was trying to
Yep.
really include a lot of very unique ones. So that's
Yeah.
that's one that I think would resonate with a lot of folks listening.
Yeah, isn't that a cool concept? And I mean, I like to pride myself on being entrepreneurial, but I can't imagine that I would have ever come up with that in 100 years. But the just indulge me here a second, then, MC. So, you would buy a barrel, literally a barrel of whiskey, or you buy a share in a barrel.
The entire cost, yeah, the entire barrel. So
Yeah.
you would have the entire barrel, and that's
Okay.
assigned to you, titled to you. It's stored and warehoused at a distillery
Yeah.
in Scotland. And this might be, a lot of people would say, well, why would they do that? Well, if you're aging whiskey so
Yeah.
long,
Yeah.
you're going to
Yeah.
run into some cash flow issues if you're
You
if
are.
you're a
You are.
distillery.
Yeah.
Yeah, so their strategy is selling it to investors that then hold on to it for that time, and they're one of the biggest buyers of that product, in twenty
Yeah.
25 years. So you have, and even
Yeah.
along the while, if you need to sell it in 5 years, 10 years, 15, and so forth. So you always have a
Yeah.
buyer on the other end, which is nice.
Of course. Of
But it
course.
generates it. Yeah, they need it for cash flow management. That's kind of their play, their strategy. Because it could be a cash flow crunch if you have to distill all these whiskey and age them and not get paid for 20 to 25 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, what a great story.
Yeah, there's some fascinating niches. The one thing about that book and writing that book too is just the many different ways that people generate capital. It's just
Yeah.
incredible. There's no just one way. There are so many different
Yeah.
ways
There
of
you
of
go.
how people go about it, which makes it fascinating. And that's why I love studying entrepreneurship and business and investing, because you get you get exposed to all of these different ideas, which there's a ton of them like this.
Yeah.
Do you find, I mean, out of the multiple different ways entrepreneurs and individuals can pursue, whether actively or passively, um, I mean, there's got to be an individual who reads the book and goes, "Wow, I want to do all of these." And how do you manage the shiny object syndrome too? Because that's something I think most entrepreneurs struggle with as well.
That's a great question. So in the book, I share, strategies for being an active investor and what you should think about before coming one, and then also strategies of being a passive investor. I don't necessarily like that word passive. It's more like you're leveraging other people's skill sets, talents, resources, and capital and so forth, and partnering with them as a capital partner. But you could do that passively, and what you should think about if you want to go that route. Obviously, as an investor in things like this, If you want to diversify a portfolio into different asset classes, you're gonna have to do that passively, right? Because you can. There's just no way that you can participate actively and be an operator in every single one of these niches. These niches could keep could for several lifetimes. So yeah, you should think about things when it comes to being a active investor or being a passive investor. Mindset shift. A lot of individuals that get into something and they want to do everything themselves. They like the full control. What I've loved doing and enjoy doing personally is finding some fantastic operators and people and partnering with them. And it's been a lot of fun. It's been a great way to diversify, and obviously, I've made a lot of friendships and met some incredible people along the way.
Where do you feel like you're at right now in your investing journey? I always think of the there's kind of like the evolution of man thing that's been popularized by whoever you want to, whether it's mainstream education or it's real. I'm not the one to tell you, what I know about evolution, but it's like the monkey to the man, right? And in real estate, it's normally, single family to whatever else, right? And so, what does that look like for you? Like, where do you feel like you're at in that journey? Not necessarily with real estate, but just as an investor in general.
Yeah, great question, Adam. I think it's the one. I would say it's the importance of time. The time is so much more important than any other resources. So I think it's a sliding scale where in the beginning you're putting a lot of time, energy, and focus into into what you're doing, either actively or passively. And as you start to figure out the game and have life events happen, you start to realize that, wow, time is actually much more important. So, hence the transition away from being an operator and someone that is active in a lot of roles to someone that is taking a more passive approach to things and playing a more passive role. So, I think that's kind of been the evolution. Of finding the right people, partnering with the right people, trusting the right people, and then being able to in that way diversify your income streams and diversify your investments.
What's one investment for you personally when you look back on it and you say to yourself, "Wow, I can't believe how well that went." Maybe we could also say, what's been the one where you said, "Wow, that was terrible." But from the outside looking in, I know it seems like the deal or deals that you've done with Josh, and I want to say the winery, right? That seems to have been pretty solid. I'm gonna guess that maybe that's one of your top ones, but would love to hear from you, just your ups and downs as far as number one and the one that you regretted.
That's a great question. Yes, I would say one of the things that have really surprised me and I've really enjoyed uh, that asset class is historic resorts, and finding the right partner in that has been incredible. I would have never ever thought of getting into something like that ever, not in a million years. I thought I was crazy when I did. I thought I was crazy, a year or two, 3 years into it. I'm like, what am I doing? But if I have to look back right now, it's been incredible learning that business and understanding that, and also being part of projects where you find these incredible historic properties, and you're trying to. It's a property with a soul that you're trying to revive. You could see like this had something special. So how do we bring out the soul of the property? And then from a business aspect, what you have is you have a real estate play because it's on these resorts are on 20 plus acres of land. So you have the real estate aspect to it, but you have an operating business on top of that. So the operating business on top of that obviously has to have a main source of income, a main revenue driver. And a lot of these historic resorts, one of the things that is a very good model is weddings, banquets, and events. If you think about the businesses to be in, children, pets, and weddings, it's not bad businesses to be in. And with these resorts, if you have a wedding on an historic resort that's, drivable distance from a major metropolitan area, well, people are bringing the entire family and friends all on your property for 2 to 3 days at a time. So, using that example that you shared, Adam, of the winery, there's a winery that I'm a partner in. It's one of the oldest wineries in the United States. It actually has grandfathered in that you can drink American champagne. So, that property is built on weddings, and it's also got an incredible, incredible history. Where I mean, you're pretty close to Atlantic City. So, if anybody's seen Boardwalk Empire, a lot of that stuff happened on that winery, and actually, they shot some scenes and footage for that TV show on the winery. Fun fact. But there was a lot of that stuff going on that winery. And then, of course, the champagne is why during JFK's inauguration in the White House, they had Renault champagne. But anyway, so you've got that property with spirit, with soul that you're trying to revive. You're having a wedding venue with a speakeasy and an incredible wedding venue. So you bring people on the property. Well, now you have an hotel also there. You have golf courses. You have a winery where you're selling wine and you're doing wine tasting. There's restaurants, where people could eat breakfast and lunch and dinner. And then there's also bakery and other pop-up shops. There's an outdoor village kind of thing, and we just added a spa to it too. So you bring all that stuff in. Those are all revenue streams. So the one main revenue source is the operating business, is kind of the wedding business, but all these other ones that are ancillary on property, it's just a extremely powerful business model. So we've done that at quite a number of those properties. So I would say that's the asset class that is really, I still can't believe
Historic
that I'm
resorts. I mean,
involved.
I've never even heard it referred to as that formally. So, I mean, yeah, my brain's already going, million miles an hour on that. But continue, because we want to hear what was the flip side, and I'm sure whatever the flip side was, there's scenarios where that type of investment can work out. But what was the one where you're like, man, I didn't see that coming?
Well, I have probably had my teeth kicked in quite a number of asset classes. So this would be a podcast in itself. Um, but yeah, I mean, like I would say, I think a lot. I didn't get into the Airbnb game, which I'm glad obviously there's some very successful folks in the Airbnb game, and they do really. There's still people doing really well in certain markets at a certain price point with certain properties, but also staying on single family. That was when I started out, and we're talking now 20 something years ago. Started out in single family. I think I learned a lot of very hard lessons there. That's a very, very difficult asset class to do successfully, consistently, and scale it, especially if you buy and hold. So, are there people that do that? Absolutely. But if you buy and hold properties, single family ones, and you try to scale that, it's a very different business, which yeah, it's I found that much much harder than some of the other asset classes, especially in the beginning. Because it's when you have a single family property, you have one door, and there's a lot that goes on with one property. Now try and add a couple more, and if you could just imagine if there's 10 single family properties separately with 10 tenants, and 10 maintenance and 10 potential damage to the properties, and phone calls and so forth, and late payments or non-payments, that kind of stuff. It's a very very tough business. Have people done it successfully? Of course they have. For me, that's where I got a lot of shots, a lot of jabs.
Someone who's done it well, who actually, now I think about it, would be, you got to reach out to him because it's been a while, but he's definitely an ANCAP, and I think you would know him. Our buddy Sepper Beckham, I think is how you say his name. Do you know
Yep.
Sepper? He's done very well in the single family sector, and has from the last time I chatted with him, really intentionally chosen to stay in that asset class for a certain number of reasons. But to your point, and I think because single family homes are just so relatable to everyone, you grow up around them, you just feel like you know them even if you don't know them. It's a really good, it seems like just gateway drug into investing, right? Is the single family home. And because if you don't, and it's okay to, I think, to take those steps too in that direction, because ultimately it is going to lead you to historic resorts or whatever your final destination is. um, Man, I keep thinking about the historic resorts asset class now. Like, obviously the one that you're connected to and invested in is well positioned for all the reasons that you outlined. Are you invested in any other markets or any other historic resorts across the country?
Yeah, I mean, there's another one close to Annapolis in on an island called just Kent Island. Kind of similar play. Fantastic wedding venue, the wedding business. If you can imagine, if anybody's seen the movie Wedding Crashers, that's kind of what it looks like on the Chesapeake Bay. And the wedding venue itself, it's spectacular. Beautiful part of the world. And again, same model. So you have a real estate play, you have, and then an operating business on top of it. Also, other things that I would also share. There's a lot of other, obviously, benefits to it too. The historic parts leads to a lot of incentives that are out there, and also tax incentives, and then also. Depending on what community you're a part of, there are also some of them that fall into opportunity zones, which has been a great play. Yeah, and then you also, I mean, there are some folks. I've not been involved with one of these strategies itself, but there are historic property easements that a lot of people have taken advantage of too. Because there is an incentive for a lot of these old great places to be restored and to be revitalized. So yeah, it's a very, very unique asset class. I'll just also add something to what you said about the single family stuff, Adam. Is like that's a great place for people to start. You really understand a business if you buy. And most, how many people have started there? A lot of people have started there. You buy one of those properties and you get started as an investor. It's a great place to learn a business and how business work and to learn real estate. So that eventually, when you get into bigger projects, just having that and being the operator yourself and managing it yourself, yeah, I mean, it gives you a lot of experience and a lot of great lessons that you can then take into bigger and bigger projects.
100%. And it's funny you mentioned the Airbnb business. I can't remember who it was, but I remember I was listening to your show, and it had to be 2019, maybe early 2020, and you had the guy on who, I mean, at the time, that's when the Airbnb model became really popular, and their education on it started coming out for the first time. And you had someone on your show who was like kind of providing mentorship for it. I remember, but that asset class in particular, vacation rentals, luxury rentals, short term, long term rentals. You're absolutely right. I mean, just over the past like 2 years, it's become really, really flooded. And yeah, I mean, for anyone who's listening right now that's considering it, I mean, it's just something to be aware of. I think that if you're new, you're not going to see. It's just how saturated that specific market has gotten right now. And yes, there's people crushing it, but those are things that as soon as you said, I'm like, yeah, that's true. It's definitely kind of what I would consider a risky one at this point if you don't know what you're doing.
I'll add another asset class that I've learned quite a bit about. It's fascinating too, and similar to the whiskey play, where there's an element you're of a commodity play, and then also a wealth preservation. And I could see this as an on trend kind of investment too, of where things are going. That's strategic metals, so rare earth metals. Um, they're a very, very interesting
Louis
asset class.
O'Connor, right? Louis O'Connor.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Louis a friend. Yeah, great, great guy. I've learned a ton from that asset class from Louis, and also yeah, I mean, like just that entire asset class is and that niche is positioned for so many different trends, whether it's military applications, whether it's the EVs, whether it is medical applications. There are so many industries that there's a massive demand for, and the supply for the most part is controlled by China. So that is going to lead to a very big asymmetric opportunity down the line, and I think that time is going to come for that asset class too. So it has already, if you look at the numbers, right? The increases year on year, but I think like the massive fireworks in that asset class is still coming ahead. So that's going to be interesting. So yeah, there's a whole bunch. Like I said in the books, there's about 66 that I share. And it's funny though. Once you've got done with 3, there's probably another 20 that I could have included. So maybe there'll be a fourth one down the line. But yeah, it's been fascinating to just interview people, talk about these different strategies, different asset classes and niches, and then also, just sharing them with a lot of folks and learning alongside my audience and keep learning as I'm writing all these books.
Maybe that's the fourth book you write too, is a some type of framework to help the consumer determine which one is the best fit for them, right? Like that's what I'm thinking is, man, I'm gonna read MC's book and it's gonna be like being at the candy shop. Which one which one do I take? So I love it though. I'm learning so much right now just having you here.
There's actually a framework in there. So I included a framework in there where folks can run all of these different assets and niches through this filter. Um, and it's just an investment opportunity filter that I call off, obviously looking at the cash flow, the tax benefits it has, the potential for upside potential. Is there potential for growth, for your capital to grow significantly? And then also from a leverage perspective, or can you partner with people with the right skill sets? Um, talents, unique abilities, and networks and capital to invest in that asset class. So that's kind of that filter is included in there. But yeah, like you said, collectively we have the attention span of a gnat. All of us these days, and everybody's got a shiny object. So I put a filter in there for folks to run their ideas through and to run these asset classes and niches through.
All right, and to bring this one in for a landing, and by the way, if you're just tuning in or on the replay, thank you for hopping in here today. If you haven't already, hit the like button, the retweet button. Make sure you give MC a follow. But one topic I know I always look forward to diving into with you, and probably should have allotted more time for it. Maybe another time we have you on here. But plain and simple, MC, who's running the world? Who's behind all of this?
Well, I know who's running my world, and that's me, and your world, it's you. So we could speculate on that forever, but I think like the big theme too, Adam, like as I was talking with Dave, is that for a lot of people, we find ourselves where we find ourselves on this the piece of dirt wherever we are, and it is really like we can build whatever we want. We have the ability to build stuff for ourselves, our families, our community, and build our own world. And I think that's kind of the central theme is to have control over yourself, have control over your emotions, see what's coming, the storm clouds that are coming in, because they're gonna provide some massive chaos and some sparks and fireworks. But amidst all of this, I think there's massive opportunities, and as Doug Casey always says, there's opportunities for crisis investing. So I think there's some, like I said, very very heavy dark storm clouds, but there's a shining little sliver at the end of them.
Oh, always is, and it is times like now that that sliver becomes more profound if you're consciously aware of that, you know this moment. I don't know how else to frame it. Like right now is the time that the millionaires, billionaires, and trillionaires spark their fire a lot of the time. So Everyone, thank you again for tuning in to ANCAP Radio. If you have not already followed MC or checked out his book, we have it down below. 21. Well, actually, we got. What's the one coming out soon? 66 best cash flow niches is what it's called.
No, no, there's a trilogy of books, and there, if folks are interested in downloading them, I'm just letting people download the ebook and the audiobook. They're at cashflowninja.com. If folks want a physical copy, they can go to Amazon. But if they just want the ebook and the audiobook, they could just go to cashflowninja.com. It's available over there.
There we go. Awesome. Well, MC, as you know what, I got this from you. You've probably heard me say it now a few times too, but thank you so much for investing your most valuable resource with us here today. Your time. Same goes to our listeners. We appreciate it. Guys, thank you for tuning into ANCAP Radio. We'll be here next week, 3 p.m. EST. We'll see you then. Remember, in all you think, say, and do, take it to the next level.